אתפוס את הגלים הגבוהים. אני
All right. Hi, everybody. We are going to keep on rolling with our Zoomathon. We are almost to the end of Zoomathon Part 2. But first, we have a couple of really exciting programs last for the night. So our third to last, we have Joshua Pollack with us, who is the founder of Rosenberg's Bagels, where Matthew and I frequent embarrassingly often. And my New Yorker husband will eat these bagels gladly, which is really pretty high praise from a New Yorker. So we are so thrilled to have Joshua here with us. Thank you for joining us, and take it away.
Thank you, Rabbi. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. To a lot of you I know, a lot of you I have not met before. Zoomathon seems like it's been an exciting thing for you guys through COVID. I think we have all become Zoom professionals at this point, and it's gonna probably stick around even after the pandemic has probably died down. So I look forward to seeing you all in person, but this is a close second. Rabbi asked me to come on and talk a little bit about Jewish food and what it means to me. And I wanted to just start with a little history of how Rosenberg's Bagels and Delicatessen came to be. I grew up in North Jersey. I was born in Manhattan and raised in Bergen County, New Jersey. And pretty much everywhere around me, I was surrounded by great bagel shops and delis and pizzerias. And I thought that was just like what everything was like everywhere else in the country. And then I decided to move out to Colorado to go to CU Boulder, fell in love with the Flatirons the second I laid eyes on them. And I went to CU Business School starting in 2002. And when I got there, I realized the same food that I loved and frequented at home was always the centerpiece of our family gatherings. Didn't really exist out here in the way I remembered it in back east. So proceeded years of smuggling bagels and lox and pastrami back from New Jersey. The first iteration of Rosenberg's was in the dorms. I would come home after the high holidays with a suitcase full of food and sell it to the other people in the dorms that were longing for that food as well. And that's really where the idea came up to open a Jewish deli and bagel shop out here, which then later expanded into other offerings that I loved from growing up, like pizza and Italian deli. But to the most important part, the Jewish food, to me, the beauty of it is it represents so much more than just basic sustenance. It's a history that's handed down generation to generation. It's nostalgia, so it's things people remember from a distant time, often related with family. The thing I love about specifically bagels and lox is, for my family at least, it saved a lot of fights between my mom and my grandma over cooking brisket or the other things that they used to disagree on. And we could just put out a platter and enjoy the company, enjoy family, and not focus too much on that. Obviously, it's really important for family recipes to be painstakingly worked through in that generational gap. It's even more of the reason why when I set out to open Rosenberg's, it became more of a life's mission than just doing something I was passionate about. My mentor in New Jersey was one of many very successful bagel shop owners and deli owners. And he was the third generation, and he worked really, really hard, 60 to 80-hour weeks. The deli business is not, the food industry is not for the lighthearted. And what I saw in my mentor was he worked too hard to the point that he couldn't enjoy the success that he had. He used to like to take he was a close family friend, and he would take us to basketball games at Madison Square Garden. He had these great seats, and he would fall asleep during the game because he was so tired from working so hard. And for that reason, he didn't want any of his kids to go into that business. And they all went off to do other things, law, marketing. They're all very successful, but none of them inherited that bagel store and that Jewish deli that had been passed down for 3 generations. And that was a perfect example when I started doing my research of what's happening to bagel stores and delis in New York and in New Jersey. Is there's this generational gap where the kids either don't want to work too hard, or the parents were very successful and they didn't want their kids to do that and have to work as hard as they did. It's a very classic, I would say, new American story. Probably a few generations ago, there was no choice. You worked for the family business. That was it. And what I started to see was the food that I loved so much that all of us connect with on a deeper level was starting to disappear. That institutional knowledge that you can't really learn in a book, you can't really learn in cooking school. It has to come from that multi-generational experience. Muhammad, a man from Egypt who taught me how to make bagels, he was a 3rd-generation bagel roller. And he said that the only way to learn is to have this information passed down. And so that's who I learned from. I went and studied with him for many months. And it really just struck a chord to think that Muhammad's son is not going to be a bagel roller, that there at a certain point, good New York bagels were becoming pretty close to being extinct. There was a really good documentary that also perpetuated this feeling for me, and that was called The Deli Man. And they go into kind of a documentary style studying of all the famous delis and the new delis. And he brought up a scary point that in the 1950s and 60s, there were over 1,500 Jewish delis in New York City. And now out of all those 1,500, there are only 4. When the movie was made, there were 5 left, but Carnegie has since closed its doors. So it was, something that I was like, oh, maybe I'll open a bagel shop because I'm passionate about it. And then it turned out to be, no, this is super important food for our people, for our culture. And it's not really being passed down from generation to generation anymore. And so I made it my life's goal to make this food accessible to the masses. Luckily, here in Colorado is where we are really focusing our energy, but that's not to say that one day maybe my sons want to bring Rosenbergs out of the state of Colorado and start to bring it to other places where people don't have this food and miss it and long for it. And I constantly tell my staff and my people that we're lucky because we don't just sell food, we sell emotions, we sell love, we sell joy. When I was putting the matzo ball soup recipe together, we took 3 different Boobies recipes and melded them together because our slogan is, our matzo ball soup is only second to your Bubbies. And that's because you'll never beat that. You'll never beat that nostalgic memory. But what we're trying to do is at least give people a little, remembrance of those times. Not all of our Bubbies are here anymore, neither of mine are. And so their legacy lives on through the recipes that they gave me that I now serve to the masses at Rosenberg's. And so it's something that's really intertwined with our heritage as Jewish people. I think that breaking bread together is a super important way to stay connected, not just with family, but with strangers. It's always been a thing that our people have done. And in a time like now, where our country is so divided and there's so much turmoil, I think breaking bread and sitting around a table to have good conversation and good connection could really do a lot of good towards healing this world and putting us on the track to where we need to be. I don't know where we at on time, Rabbi, but that's kind of my spiel on Jewish food and why I feel it's so important and why I've devoted my life to it. Each of the recipes for the most part has some kind of history. I talked about the matzo ball soup. The chopped liver is actually my dad's recipe, but he would use cow liver and chicken liver, and I'm only using chicken liver because I think cow liver is gross. But that was personal preference. We're doing things also to try and, let's call it save, but popularize foods of our ancestors that have become more of like a fear factor food for a lot of the Jewish community, and that is pickled herring, creamed herring, and gefilte fish, which we make all in-house. And I promise you all is incredibly delicious. And everyone just needs to try it because herring is the reason that our forefathers lived so long and were so healthy. I swear, the Russ and Daughters documentary in New York City is about the daughters, all of which who were alive when they wrote the documentary. One of them was 104 years old, and she was completely with it. And the interviewer asked her, "What's the secret?" And she said, "Herring, of course. Why is that even a question? Eat herring every day and you'll live to be 104." And so certain foods like that hold cultural significance and definitely a lineage of our people. And we can't let it go to waste because some companies have made it gross over the last however many years.
Absolutely. If anyone, Joshua, thank you. If anyone has questions, you can throw them in the chat. Oh, here's a good question.
Okay, here we go.
Can you find an alternative to schmaltz or pretzel?
For me, it's hard because there's so much good flavor there, but you could use a vegetable shortening, and you would want to render some onions in it because that's what gives schmaltz its signature flavor outside of the umami you would get from the chicken. Those are, it's a good question, and it's something that we've explored, obviously, to try and give some vegetarians a good taste of soup. But for now, the recipe just tastes so perfect, made with schmaltz, how we make it. We use Boulder chickens and all that, and that's the other fun part about Jewish cooking is it really stems around just a few things, and so does French cooking if you think of mirepoix. But for us, it all of our cooking is based in the things that our great grandparents could cook back on the shtetls, and that was raising chickens was cheap, and carrots, celery, and onions. And so that's kind of the basis for everything. And it's a tough substitute, let's just put it that way. When it's the core of all Jewish cooking, it's kind of hard to substitute, but I have done that for events for vegetarians, vegetable shortening, rendered in onions.
I'll tell you, even when I was a vegetarian, I still ate chicken soup because
Yeah.
you just make the exceptions you need to.
Yeah.
Barnard,
Where's Rosenberg? Where is Rosenberg's?
We have one in the historic Five Points neighborhood at 26th and Welton Street. We have another one at the Stanley Marketplace in Aurora at 2501 North Dallas Street. We have our kosher wholesale facility where you can get all of our bulk products, but no sandwiches, so that we can keep the kosher parv hechsher. And that is located at 942 South Monaco Street. It's the former bagel store space that had been there for 30 some odd years before I bought it. And now we are opening our third full service Rosenberg's Bagels in Boulder, Colorado next week.
When are you coming south?
Probably next. It's an unfortunate thing. I've kind of picked a little fight with the city of Denver. I don't appreciate how they've handled and treated small business through the pandemic and the previous years. And so until the mayor is no longer mayor, I may not open another restaurant in Denver County.
Huh. Try south, like near Highlands Ranch.
I like Highlands Ranch a lot. I love the tech center. So yeah, we've got our eyes set on it. And our motto is really, we want to grow big so that we can bring this food to everyone, but we have to grow at a pace that doesn't affect the quality of our food, the consistency of our food, and the consistency and quality of our service. And so at some points we've kind of gotten to the edge of that. And so I feel that the pace we're hitting is probably pretty good, but we will get to you, I promise.
Dana, is that what county flag is that? What is that? I don't know what the flag is, but there's some kind of clear message coming.
City of Centennial.
Centennial, yeah, I love it.
I got the flag right here.
That's fantastic.
I'm telling you, Matthew and I moved last summer, and not an insignificant part of that decision was that it put us closer to a Rosenberg's.
Oh, there you go.
Priorities. Jerry Lasso has something he wanted to share.
Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you, a year ago, I had my 80th birthday party, and the caterer used all of Rosenberg's bagels. So after the party was over, she packed whatever was left in the bag and we went home. And of course, every bagel in the bag was a plain bagel. All the other bagels were gone, but I have to tell you, I started eating bagels in the early 1940s. And this is the closest bagel I have ever had to match those bagels back in the 40s. The taste, the
Thank you.
texture,
Thank you.
it's just, now whenever I go to Rosenberg's, all I buy are the plain bagels. But
It's just 5 ingredients, you know, and I think what I didn't reinvent any wheels. The funny part about it, it was one of those things. I went to school for finance, and that's what I thought I wanted to do with my life. But there was this glaring thing. There was this food that was disappearing, and it wasn't that the roadmap wasn't there for you. I'm using the same recipe that you were eating in the early 1900s. It's a 100-year-old recipe. It's 5 ingredients, and it's just all about using the same technique that people have been using in New York for 100 years. And all these companies that have, you know, expanded across the country want to make it fast, easy, and cheap. So they kind of take the fast food approach at it. And, you know, a bagel takes 48 hours to make. It touches the hands of at least 4 people, you know, and so you have to have a passion for it and be willing to take the extra steps if you want to have a real good bagel. If you don't boil it, it's not a bagel. So not many people are boiling bagels out here even.
There's a great question, which I would also love to know the answer to. Why is it called Rosenberg's? Where'd that come from?
It's a great question. That is my mother's maiden name. So that's the Rosenberg side of my family is my New York side of my family. They're from Brooklyn, Flatbush. And I was I think 4th generation born in New York on that side of the family. You know, my dad's okay with it. So it's not Pollock's, but, you know, I went to CU for CU Denver in 2012, knowing I wanted to open Rosenberg's and or open a bagel shop in Delhi. So I went back to their entrepreneurship certificate program, and I won a prize in their business plan competition, which got me some in-kind sponsorships from different professionals. And one of them was like a branding expert. And so we were doing a lot of naming exercises over the course of a couple of weeks. And Rosenberg's was always in the contention. And we actually picked Empire Bagels, was the first LLC I created, because the Empire State wanted to build a bagel empire that could last hundreds of years. But it turned out that Empire Kosher was one of the longest standing trademarks in New York City. And they made everything from chicken to pickles to bagels to bread and before we could even get going, I received a cease and desist. So when we went back to the drawing board, there was really only one like glaring name, and Rosenberg's kept standing out. It sounds like a deli that's been around in New York for 100 years already. So it was pretty cool. And I lost my mom when I was in high school, and you know, she was probably my biggest cheerleader in life. And she told me I could do whatever I wanted. And that if I followed my heart, which often lives in my stomach, that I'd never work a day in my life. And she was right. So I named the deli after her, really.
That's beautiful. We can go for just one more question. Mark and Bobby, I see that your hand is up. If you want to unmute yourselves.
Right. A question about the bagel. Do you use different water, or do you treat the water anyway?
Yeah, so we have a machine that comes within parts per million, replicating New York's water. And so that is actually one of the big key factors. Everyone likes to talk about the water a lot, but really it's all the techniques of making a traditional bagel that are the most important. But the water is kind of cool and exciting. When I was coming up with the recipe and learning in New Jersey, I would go into New York and I'd steal water samples from all over the different boroughs, and I sent them out to CSU, and they would test the water. And I was getting kind of different readings depending on where I was getting it. And then finally I did some research, and I reached out to the state of New York, who invited me to their water treatment plant and gave me their water breakdown. They're very proud of their water. It's one of the largest protected watersheds in the country. In the Catskill Mountain Range that supplies the whole tri-state area. The big aqueduct that I went to where the facility is was in the Die Hard movie where they're like driving the truck in the tube under the water. If anyone's ever seen that, it was pretty cool for me that was a great childhood movie. So we found what the source water was, and I found a water specialist, I guess. They do a lot of like water filter installs up in like the mountains and backcountry and stuff like that. And he got excited about trying to figure out how to recreate that water. And when I started doing research, I realized it wasn't that uncommon for people to try to replicate water from a different part in the country. It's done a lot with beer and wine, and coffee. And so, yeah, pretty much the ultimate point is to mimic the minerals in New York's water because it affects the strength of gluten. And I hope we don't have too many gluten-free people on this call because bagels and pizza are the most glutinous bread on the planet. And that's what makes them so delicious.
Joshua, thank you.
Please,
so much for
please, can I ask a quick question very fast?
Yeah.
Is that all right, Rabbi?
Yeah, go for it. We just got to move on to our next piece. So quick.
Okay. Why are in Denver, the black and white cookie, they're hard as a rock. And someone told me one place you get it in Denver, and I forgot what the place was. Do you know?
Oh, I'm unsure. Yeah. So what we did is we make ours a little bit smaller now, and you get 3 of them instead of one big one. It's, we face it with all bread products out here and all pastries that we live in such a dry climate that everything dries out a lot faster here. And so where, a bagel can sit on your counter probably for 2 days and still be good in New Jersey and New York, you're not going to have a very happy tooth if you try to eat a day-old bagel you leave out here in Colorado. So yeah, it's an unfortunate thing, but I think we've got it down pat at this point. If you want to come give us a try, we produce them every other day. So they're never more than a day old.
So everyone should absolutely go to Rosenberg's if you haven't been yet. Run, don't walk. And we'll see if I can get the other. It's part of Bridget Tuttle's restaurant group. And there are other, we'll see if I get them all. There's Famous Jay's Pizza, which my very picky husband loves. There's Lou's Italian Specialties, the sandwiches, and then Sherry's.
Sherry's
So,
shop.
did I get them all?
Sherry Rosenberg's. That's my grandma. She used to work in an old soda jerk fountain. And so we made that after her.
Go to all of them, the best food. Thank you for joining us. I was very excited about this one, as I'm sure everyone can guess. I think I told you my first High Holy Day sermon here in Denver was 9 minutes on the history of the bagel. So we are bagel fans here at Temple Sinai. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, thank you. And I'll say Joshua's niece and nephew are very, very cute. They're in our preschool.
I'm biased.
They're delicious. Almost as delicious as the bagels. So we aren't even going to put up the wait screen. We're going to go right into our next program. We're going to turn off the stream lease. And we are going to show,